The stars shone like distant jewels against the void as the UNSC vessel Horizon glided through space. Captain Elaine Foster sat in her command chair, watching the main screen with calm eyes. Earth had enjoyed peace for almost 100 years. War was something people read about in history books. "Captain, we're approaching the meeting point," said Lieutenant Peter Gould. The young officer had an unusual interest in old military tactics, something his friends often teased him about. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Prepare to welcome our guests," Elaine replied. She smoothed her uniform and stood. This was a routine diplomatic mission, meeting the Valari, a reptilian species interested in trade with humans. Dr. Alan Murphy joined her on the bridge. The xenorchaeologist adjusted his glasses and smiled. "Excited to meet them, Captain. Their cultural artifacts suggest they once had contact with humans thousands of years ago. Let's hope they remember us fondly, then," Elaine said with a small smile. The Valari ships appeared on the screen, elegant vessels with curved hulls that shimmered with a green-blue light. The communication panel beeped. "They're hailing us, Captain," said the communications officer. On screen, a reptilian face appeared. The Valari had scales that shifted from emerald to sapphire, with large golden eyes that blinked sideways. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Zelfar. We are honored to meet the legendary." A blast rocked the Valari ship. The ambassador's image dissolved into static. "What was that?" Elaine demanded. "Unknown vessel approaching fast," Peter called out. It's massive, Captain." On the screen, a dark shape emerged from behind a small moon. The ship was enormous, covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. It fired again, tearing through one of the Valari escort ships. "Red alert. Shields up," Elaine ordered. "Captain, they're hailing us," the communications officer said, voice shaking. The screen changed to show a gray-skinned being with multiple eyes arranged in a cluster. It spoke in a clicking, multi-tone voice that the translator converted to English. "Impossible. Humans still exist. The records indicated your species was extinct. This is Captain Elaine Foster of the United Nations Space Coalition. We are on a peaceful mission. Please cease your attack on the Valari ships." The alien made a sound like grinding metal. "I am Hive Commander Vex Orn of the Krell Empire. Your existence is an unexpected variable. You will be eliminated." The transmission cut. The massive ship turned its weapons toward the Horizon. "Evasive maneuvers," Elaine shouted. "Get us out of here." The Horizon shuddered as it turned sharply, barely avoiding the energy beam that sliced through space where they had been moments before. "Captain, one of the Valari shuttles is still intact. They're requesting emergency docking," Peter reported. "Granted. Then prepare for jump to Earth coordinates." As the crippled Valari shuttle limped into the Horizon's Bay, the human ship accelerated away from the battle. The Krell vessel pursued, but the Horizon was faster and soon opened enough distance to make the jump to safety. In the meeting room, Ambassador Zelfar trembled, his scales pale with fear. "We came seeking the war gods," he said, voice weak. "The ancient texts speak of humans as fierce warriors who could stand against any threat." Dr. Murphy leaned forward. "War gods? I'm afraid you're mistaken. Humans haven't fought a war in generations." The ambassador's eyes widened. "Then we are all doomed. The Krell have conquered half the galaxy. They destroy any species that resists. We sought you because the legends say humans were the most fearsome warriors the stars had ever seen." Elaine felt a chill run down her spine. Why would they think humans are extinct? "They have only encountered your unmanned research stations. The Krell believe humans died out centuries ago." Zelfar looked at each of them. "But the old stories call you sleeping war gods. And now the Krell have kicked in the temple door." Peter's eyes gleamed with an odd light. "Then perhaps it's time for the gods to wake up." Admiral Laura Summers frowned at the screens showing the damaged Villari shuttle in the Horizon's docking bay. The emergency meeting in UNSC headquarters on Earth had been going for 3 hours, and she was growing tired of the argument. "We are not a military power," she said firmly. "We have defensive capabilities only. That's been our way for nearly a century." Dr. Alan Murphy stood next to a large display showing ancient alien text. "Admiral, with all respect, these Villari records tell a different story about our past. They describe humans as death worlders who could endure conditions that would kill other species." "Fairy tales," said one of the council members. "Maybe not," Murphy replied. "Earth's gravity is higher than most inhabited worlds. Our tolerance for temperature extremes, radiation, and toxins is unusual. What's normal for us would be deadly for many species." Captain Elaine Foster stepped forward. "The Krell destroyed the Villari ships without warning or mercy. They thought humans were extinct. When they realized we weren't, they tried to kill us too." Lieutenant Peter Gold cleared his throat nervously. Everyone turned to look at the young tactical officer. "I've been studying old military records as a hobby," he said. "If what Ambassador Zelfar says is true, the Krell have conquered 12 systems in the past year alone. Their technology isn't more advanced than ours, but they have numbers and experience. We have neither." The room fell silent until Chief Engineer Richard Garcia spoke up. "We might have something else." When everyone looked at him, he continued, "The Luna Archives." Admiral Summers' face darkened. "Those were sealed by international agreement." "But not destroyed," Garcia pointed out. "Everything is still there. The weapons, the ships, the battle plans, all stored beneath the lunar surface." Ambassador Zelfar, who had been quiet until now, stepped into the center of the room. His scales had regained some color, but he still looked weakened. "My people have already fallen. The Krell will strip our worlds bare and use our children as slave labor. They do this to all who cannot fight back." His golden eyes swept the room. "The old texts call humans sleeping war gods for a reason. Your people chose peace, but you never lost your capacity for war." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the headquarters. A junior officer rushed into the room. "Admiral, Krell scouts have been detected at the edge of the solar system." The room erupted in panicked voices until Admiral Summers slammed her hand on the table. "Enough. Dr. Murphy, Lieutenant Gold, Chief Garcia, you have 48 hours to see what's in those archives. Captain Foster, prepare the Horizon for potential combat operations." She looked at each of them with steel in her eyes. "I hope we're wrong about the Krell, but I won't risk Earth on that hope." Later that day, a small shuttle descended toward the lunar surface. Through the viewport, Lieutenant Gold could see nothing special about the landing zone. Just another flat plane on the moon's barren landscape. "Are you sure this is right?" he asked Garcia. The engineer nodded as he input a series of codes into an ancient-looking device. "The entrance hasn't been opened in 70 years. The ground beneath them suddenly split open, revealing a massive hangar bay extending deep into the lunar crust. As lights automatically flickered on, they gasped. Hundreds of warships sat in neat rows, their hulls still gleaming despite decades of disuse. Missile platforms, fighter craft, and weapon systems too numerous to count filled the enormous space. "My God," whispered Dr. Murphy. "We really were war gods." Garcia's eyes gleamed in the artificial light. "And we might need to be again." Outside the shuttle, more refugee ships appeared in Earth orbit each hour, carrying species fleeing the Krell advance. All came with the same desperate hope, that the legendary human warriors would awaken from their long slumber. In the darkness of the lunar hangar, Lieutenant Gould ran his hand along the hull of a massive battleship. The name was still visible on its side. Retribution *. Deep within the lunar facility, Richard Garcia wiped sweat from his brow as he worked on an ancient control panel. The dust of decades covered everything, but the systems were coming online one by one. How much longer? asked Admiral Summers, who had come to see the progress herself. Hours, not days, Garcia replied. Whoever sealed this place made sure it would be ready if needed again. Lieutenant Gold looked up from a stack of tactical manuals he had been studying. These battle plans are amazing. The formations, the strategies. I've never seen anything like them. Dr. Murphy approached with a troubled expression. Admiral, there's something you need to see. He led them to a sealed door at the back of the main control room. The sign on it read, Project Sentinel. Authorized personnel only. What is it? Summers asked. According to the records, it's why we never completely dismantled our military, Murphy explained. A contingency plan in case of extinction-level events. Garcia used his override codes on the door. It slid open with a hiss, revealing a long hallway lined with what looked like glass coffins. Inside each one was a person, sleeping peacefully. Cryosleep chambers, Garcia whispered. There must be hundreds. Admiral Summers walked slowly down the hallway, staring at the sleeping figures. Who are they? The best of the best, Murphy said, reading from a tablet. Elite soldiers, tacticians, engineers, people with military skills too valuable to lose. They volunteered for cryosleep when the world turned to peace. Can we wake them? Gold asked. We can, Garcia confirmed. But should we? These people are from a different time, a more violent era. Admiral Summers stopped in front of one chamber. The nameplate read, General Sofia Rivera, Combined Fleet Commander. Wake her, Summers ordered. Just her, for now. An hour later, General Rivera sat in the command center, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her dark eyes were sharp as she took in her surroundings. 100 years, she said quietly. You said we've been at peace for 100 years. 98, corrected Admiral Summers. Until now. Rivera nodded. Tell me about these Krell. As the Admiral explained the situation, Dr. Michelle Coleman, a psychologist who had been called in to help, watched Rivera carefully. The woman showed no signs of cryosleep disorientation. She was focused, alert, and already thinking of battle plans. Your ships are in good condition, Rivera said, but crews need training. Weapons need testing. And we need intelligence on Krell tactics. We have some information from the refugee species, Gold offered. Rivera turned to him. You've studied the old ways, haven't you? I can tell. Gold nodded, suddenly feeling like a student called on by a strict teacher. Good, Rivera said. You'll help train the first groups. Major Nathan Wells was the next to be awakened. As Rivera's right-hand man, he paced the room restlessly after being briefed. This society you've built, he said, gesturing around. No wars, no military pride, no weapons. It's admirable, but foolish. The galaxy isn't safe. We learn to solve problems without violence. Dr. Coleman replied firmly. Wells laughed harshly. And now violence has found you anyway. That's how it always goes. Admiral Summers intervened before an argument could start. We need to test the weapons systems. There's an orbital platform that should be operational by now. The first test was scheduled for the next day. A decommissioned defense platform in Earth orbit would fire at a target drone. Everyone watched nervously from the Lunar Control Center. Charging main cannon, reported Garcia. Power levels normal. Fire when ready, ordered Rivera. The beam shot out from the platform and veered wildly off course. Instead of hitting the drone, it struck a small UNSC science station. The station exploded instantly. Alarms blared throughout the control room. On the screens, they could see escape pods launching from the damaged station. What happened? Demanded Summers. Targeting system failure, Garcia said, his face pale with shock. The old tech, it's not compatible with our current networks. In Earth's council chambers, news of the accident spread quickly. Many voices called for an immediate halt to the military revival. As humanity argued among themselves, a Valari scout ship brought word that the Krell had destroyed another civilization, just 3 systems away. Time was running out. Captain Elaine Foster stood on the bridge of the Horizon *, which had been hastily retrofitted with weapons from the lunar arsenal. The ship would serve as Earth's diplomatic vessel for a meeting with the Krell. After much debate, the UNSC had decided to attempt peaceful contact one last time. "Are you sure about this?" Lieutenant Ryan Hayes asked quietly. The young officer had been assigned to the mission by General Rivera herself. "No," Elaine admitted, "but we have to try." Council member Susan Wright, who had pushed hardest for the peace mission, checked her appearance nervously. The Krell agreed to meet. "That's a good sign." Lieutenant Hayes said nothing, but his expression showed doubt. He had spent the last week training under General Rivera, learning combat tactics that hadn't been taught in a century. The neutral meeting station came into view, a massive ring structure built by the Galactic Trade Coalition. Already dozens of refugee ships clustered around it, seeking safety. "We're being hailed," the communications officer reported. "On screen," ordered Elaine. The screen filled with the multi-eyed face of Hive Commander Vexorn. Behind him stood other Krell officers, their gray skin gleaming under the lights. "Humans," Vexorn clicked. "You requested this meeting. Speak." Susan Wright stepped forward. "Commander, we come seeking peaceful resolution. Surely our species can find a way to coexist without." Coexist. The Krell's voice translator couldn't fully capture the mocking tone, but the intent was clear. Why would the strong coexist with the weak? You have forgotten what you once were. Now you are nothing. "We chose peace," Wright insisted, "not out of weakness, but wisdom." Vexorn made a sound like grinding stones. "Then you chose extinction. The Krell Empire expands. Those who submit become servants. Those who resist become examples." Captain Foster stepped forward. "If that's your final word, then this meeting is over." "No," said Vexorn. "The meeting ends when I decide." He turned to someone off-screen. "Begin." The station shuddered violently. Alarms blared through the Horizon *. "They're attacking the station," cried the tactical officer. "Multiple Krell ships decloaking." "Get us out of here," Foster ordered. "Emergency launch now." The Horizon * broke away from the docking clamps, but a Krell energy beam struck their engines. The ship spun wildly. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, someone shouted. Lieutenant Hayes grabbed Wright and Foster. "This way." To the escape pods. As they ran through the corridors, explosions rocked the ship. Crew members rushed past, some injured, all terrified. "What about the refugees on the station?" Wright asked, her face pale. Hayes checked a data pad. "The Krell are targeting the station's core. They're going to destroy the whole thing." They reached the escape pod bay just as another explosion tore through the ship. Half the pods were already gone. Hayes shoved Foster and Wright into one of the remaining pods. "I'll get the rest of the crew," he said, turning back. "There's no time." Foster grabbed his arm. "Get in." As their pod launched, they watched in horror as the Horizon * broke apart. On the station, thousands of beings from dozens of species ran for escape pods that weren't there. The Krell ships fired methodically, destroying fleeing vessels one by one. Hayes used the tactical training General Rivera had drilled into him. He piloted the pod away from the battle, using debris for cover and keeping the pod's energy signature as low as possible. "Why?" Wright whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would they do this?" "Because they can," Hayes said grimly. "Because no one stops them." 3 days later, their pod was rescued by a UNSC patrol ship. When they returned to Earth, they found the debate over military action had ended. Images of the station's destruction had been broadcast across the planet. Thousands of innocent beings had died while humans watched, helpless to save them. In the council chambers, Admiral Summers stood before the assembled leaders. Her voice was steady as she spoke the words that would change humanity's path forever. The Krell have made their intentions clear. We have no choice but to respond in kind. She looked at each council member. As of this moment, the United Nations Space Coalition is at war. In the lunar base, General Rivera watched as more cryopods opened. The sleeping war gods were awakening. The lunar base hummed with activity. Where silence had reigned for decades, now thousands of people worked around the clock. Ships that had sat unused for a century were being prepared for battle. Fleet Admiral Jason Ortiz walked through the massive hangar bay, watching as crews struggled to learn the systems of warships older than their grandparents. He had been a science vessel commander before the crisis. Now he led what they called the First Fleet. "How are the crews coming along?" he asked General Rivera, who walked beside him. "Slowly," she admitted. "They're smart, but they think like scientists, not soldiers. They question every order and want to know the reasoning behind every tactic." "Is that so bad?" Ortiz asked. Rivera's expression softened slightly. "Perhaps not. Fresh eyes see things veterans miss." In another section of the base, Dr. Karen Miller led a team of scientists examining the old weapon systems. She had never imagined using her knowledge of energy physics for war, but the Krell had left no choice. "Look at this," she said to her team, pointing at a schematic. "The power flow is inefficient by modern standards. If we redirect it through a quantum buffer," one of her assistants gasped, "that would triple the yield." Miller nodded grimly. "And it would bypass Krell shields based on what we know of their technology." Lieutenant Commander Gregory Daniels had been an engineer on a deep space research station. Now he found himself poring over historical battle footage, looking for patterns in Krell tactics. "Stop there," he said suddenly to his team. "Rewind that segment." They watched the recording again. A Krell attack on a Valari defense platform. "See how their ships always turn that way after firing. And look at that panel on their hull." He pointed to a small section that glowed briefly. "That's a cooling vent. Their main weapons generate massive heat." "So?" asked a team member. "So that's a vulnerability," Daniels explained, excitement in his voice. "If we target those vents while their weapons are charging, we could cause a feedback loop in their power systems." These discoveries and others like them were quickly incorporated into Earth's defense plans. Dr. Miller's team developed new weapons. Daniels designed tactics specifically targeting Krell weaknesses, and Admiral Ortiz trained the first generation of human combat pilots in almost a century. Through it all, General Rivera watched with a mix of pride and sadness. She remembered what war had cost humanity before, but she also remembered why they had fought. To protect their home, their future. Now they would fight again. Lieutenant Hayes, who had survived the diplomatic mission disaster, became one of Rivera's most promising students. The young officer absorbed combat training with remarkable speed. "You have good instincts," Rivera told him after a simulation. "You think 3 moves ahead." "I still lost," Hayes pointed out. "Yes, because I think 5 moves ahead." Rivera smiled briefly. "But you'll get there." The day came sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive Krell fleet entering the solar system. This wasn't a scout force or diplomatic party. It was an invasion fleet. Admiral Ortiz stood on the bridge of his flagship, the recommissioned battleship Defiance *. Around him, the First Fleet took position at the edge of the solar system. The crews were nervous but determined. "Enemy fleet approaching," reported the sensor officer. "We count at least 300 vessels." Ortiz looked at his own fleet, barely 50 ships. But they had something the Krell didn't expect. "Begin Operation Awakening," he ordered. Across the fleet, new weapons powered up, weapons the Krell had never encountered. Tactical officers implemented Daniel's targeting solutions, focusing on the cooling vents he had identified. The first Krell ships entered weapons range. They advanced in perfect formation, confident in their superior numbers. "Fire when ready," Ortiz commanded. The human fleet released its first volley. Energy beams modified by Dr. Miller's team struck the lead Krell vessels. The beams passed through the Krell shields as if they weren't there and hit the cooling vents with surgical precision. The Krell ships exploded in spectacular chains of destruction. For a moment, the advancing fleet paused in apparent confusion. The war gods had awakened, and they remembered how to fight. News of the victory spread across Earth like wildfire. People who had never seen warfare celebrated in the streets. The sleeping war gods had won their first battle. But in the war room beneath UNSC headquarters, the mood was more cautious. "We surprised them," General Rivera said, looking at the holographic display of the solar system. "We won't have that advantage again." Admiral Summers nodded. "Intelligence suggests the Krell are already adapting their ships to protect the cooling vents we targeted." "Then we adapt too," said Admiral Ortiz. His fleet had suffered minimal losses in the battle, but he knew how quickly that could change. Captain Benjamin Kelly, commander of the assault carrier Defiance stepped forward. "We can't just play defense. The Krell will keep coming until we're overwhelmed. We need to take the fight to them." "You're suggesting an offensive?" Summers asked. Eyebrows raised. "Exactly," Kelly said. "Hit their supply lines. Disrupt their communications. Liberate worlds they've conquered. Make them fight on multiple fronts." General Rivera studied the young captain. "Bold strategy. High risk. High reward," Kelly countered. "And we have intelligence that could help." He nodded to Lieutenant Olivia Chen, a former communications specialist who had shown remarkable skill at decoding Krell transmissions. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns," Chen explained. "The Krell use a hierarchical system. Everything flows through what we're calling communication nodes, special ships or stations that coordinate their forces." Dr. William Harper, an anthropologist who had been studying Krell society, added, "The Krell are a hive mind species. Individual Krell have limited autonomy. They rely on these nodes for complex decision-making. If we can knock out these nodes," Kelly began, "their forces would be in disarray," Rivera finished, a glint of approval in her eyes. After 3 days of planning, the UNSC approved Operation Spearhead. Captain Kelly would lead a strike force of 5 ships to attack a Krell communication node near the recently conquered Valari homeworld. As they prepared to depart, Dr. Harper pulled Kelly aside. "The Krell will be studying us too, learning our weaknesses. Be careful." Kelly nodded. "We'll be back with a victory. Tell my wife I'll see her soon." The strike force jumped into Valari space and immediately faced heavy resistance. The Krell had stationed a defense fleet around the communication node, a massive space station bristling with weapons. "All ships, execute Pattern Sierra," Kelly ordered. The human vessels split into a formation General Rivera had designed specifically for this mission. Lieutenant Chen monitored Krell communications from her station. "They're confused by our approach. Their response is delayed." "Good," Kelly said. "All ships, target the node's communication array." The battle raged for hours. 2 human ships were lost, but the rest pressed forward, inflicting heavy damage on the Krell defenders. Finally, the path to the node cleared. "We're in firing position," reported the weapons officer. Kelly gave the order, "Fire primary weapons." Energy beams lanced out from the Defiance striking the node's main array. The structure began to crumble. Then disaster struck. The Krell revealed a new weapon, a pulse that somehow nullified the human shields. "Shields down," shouted the tactical officer. "Evasive maneuvers," Kelly ordered, but too late. The Defiance took multiple hits. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Reactor containment failing. Kelly made a split-second decision. Begin evacuation. All personnel to escape pods. Then he opened a channel to the other ships. Continue the attack. Complete the mission. As his crew rushed to the escape pods, Kelly remained on the bridge. Someone had to guide the dying ship. He set a collision course for the Krell node. "Captain, you need to evacuate too," his first officer pleaded. "Get to your pod," Kelly said calmly. "That's an order." Alone on the bridge, Captain Kelly watched as the Krell node grew larger on his view screen. The Defiance was breaking apart around him, but he held the course steady. His last transmission was broadcast to all human ships. "Remember what we are. Remember why we fight." The Defiance slammed into the Krell node. The explosion destroyed both completely. Across Krell-controlled space, a wave of rebellion began as word spread that the legendary war gods had struck their first blow. Captain Kelly's sacrifice had become a beacon of hope for countless enslaved worlds. Admiral Elaine Foster stood on the bridge of her new command, the battleship Vengeance *. After surviving the peace mission disaster, she had been promoted to take Captain Kelly's place. His sacrifice had changed everything. "Status report," Foster ordered, her voice steady despite the weight on her shoulders. "3 more systems have joined our alliance," Lieutenant Chen reported. "The Valari resistance has reclaimed their second moon, and the Krell are pulling back to defend their core worlds." For the first time in weeks, Foster allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy was responding. 17 species had joined their alliance against the Krell. Ships that had hidden for decades now flew alongside human vessels. But the war was far from over. The Krell Supreme Hive had responded with ruthless efficiency. On worlds where rebellions erupted, they deployed planet-killing weapons, destroying their own territories rather than lose them. "Admiral," called the communications officer. "The prisoner is ready." Foster nodded. "I'll be right there." In a secure holding cell, a strange creature waited. Unlike other Krell, its gray skin had patches of blue. Its multiple eyes moved independently of each other. This was Vex Trell, a Krell defector, something previously thought impossible. "Thank you for seeing me," Vex Trell said through a translator. Its voice sounded different from other Krell, more individual, less mechanical. "You claim to have vital information," Foster said. "I'm listening." "I am. Was a node controller," Vex Trell explained. "An accident damaged my connection to the hive mind. I began to think individually." The creature's eyes blinked in different patterns, a sign of distress. "The Krell weren't always conquerors. Long ago, we were peaceful. Then another species conquered us, altered us, made us into weapons. They're gone now, but we continue their mission." "Why are you telling us this?" Foster asked. "Because there is a way to stop them. The Supreme Hive, a physical entity that coordinates all Krell consciousness, exists on a massive station at the heart of our territory. Destroy it, and the Krell will fragment into competing mini-hives." Commander Daniel Ross, the leader of Foster's Special Forces team, leaned forward. "You're talking about a suicide mission. Their core worlds have the heaviest defenses in the galaxy." "Yes," Vex Trell admitted, "but I can provide access codes, routes through their defense grid." Foster and Ross exchanged looks. This could be a trap, or it could end the war. 3 days later, Foster presented the plan to the Alliance Council. The main fleet would launch a massive attack on the Krell border defenses, a diversion. Meanwhile, Commander Ross would lead a small stealth team to infiltrate the Supreme Hive station. Dr. Karen Miller had developed something new for the mission. "We call it the Severance Virus," she explained, showing them a small device. "It's designed to disrupt the Krell neural network. If delivered to the Supreme Hive's central processor, it should break their unified consciousness." The plan was approved. As preparations began, Lieutenant Ryan Hayes, who had distinguished himself in several battles, volunteered for Ross's infiltration team. "It's practically a suicide mission," Ross warned him. Hayes nodded grimly. "I know, but I was there when they destroyed the peace conference. I saw what they did to those refugees." The mission launched 3 days later. Foster led the main fleet in a massive assault on the Krell border defenses. The battle was fierce. Human ships fought alongside vessels from a dozen alien species. Losses were heavy on both sides. Meanwhile, using the codes provided by Vextrell, Commander Ross's team slipped through the Krell defense grid in a stealth ship. They reached the massive station at the heart of Krell space, a structure larger than Earth's moon. "We're approaching Docking Bay 7, Ross reported. "No sign they've detected us." But as they made their final approach, alarms blared. "We're being scanned," shouted the pilot. "Evasive maneuvers," Ross ordered. The ship lurched as Krell weapons locked on. Their stealth had failed. It was a trap, Hayes realized as the first hits rocked their ship. Foster received the news in the middle of battle. "Ross's team has been detected," her communications officer reported grimly. "Their ship is taking heavy fire." On her view screen, she watched as the small stealth vessel, trailing fire and debris, made a desperate run for the massive Krell station. The war gods were awake, but victory remained beyond their grasp. The stealth ship burned as it tumbled toward the massive Krell station. Inside, Commander Ross lay dead, killed when a support beam collapsed during the attack. Half the infiltration team had perished in the initial barrage. Lieutenant Hayes dragged himself to the control panel. "We can still make it," he said through gritted teeth. Blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead. "The ship is breaking apart," shouted one of the surviving team members. "Then we abandon ship," Hayes decided. "Grab the virus and the boarding equipment. We're going EVA." The 4 survivors donned spacesuits and prepared to jump. The burning ship provided the perfect cover as they launched themselves toward the station's outer hull. In the main battle, Admiral Foster watched with growing concern as the Krell deployed more ships. "We can't hold them much longer," Admiral Ortiz reported from his command ship. "Our flank is collapsing." Foster made a difficult decision. All ships execute Maneuver Phoenix. The human fleet suddenly broke formation, appearing to retreat in disarray. The Krell ships pursued eagerly, not realizing they were being drawn into a trap. Hidden Alliance ships emerged from behind a nearby moon, catching the Krell in a devastating crossfire. Meanwhile, Hayes and his team had reached the station's hull. Using tools from their suits, they cut through an access panel and slipped inside. According to Vextrell's information, the central chamber should be 3 levels down, Hayes said, checking the small holographic map. They moved carefully through the station's corridors, avoiding Krell patrols. The station was unlike anything they had seen before. Organic technology merged with mechanical systems, pulsing with an eerie life of its own. "It feels like we're inside a living thing," whispered one team member. They reached the central chamber only to find it heavily guarded. Dozens of elite Krell warriors surrounded a glowing organic structure that had to be the supreme hive. "We'll never get past them," said one of the team. Hayes studied the room. "We don't need to. Look at those conduits." He pointed to thick cables running along the ceiling. "They connect to the main system. If we can access a junction point, we can still upload the virus." They found a maintenance room nearby where several of the cables converge. As the team prepared the virus, Krell alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. "They've detected us," Hayes realized. "We need to hurry." They connected Dr. Miller's device to the cables. The virus began uploading, but too slowly. The progress bar crawled across the small screen. "Krell troops approaching," warned a team member at the door. Hayes looked at his remaining team. "Get back to the hull. There's an Alliance rescue ship on standby." "I'll finish here." "We're not leaving you," protested one. "That's an order," Hayes said firmly. "The mission comes first. One of us needs to make sure the others get home." Reluctantly, his team retreated. Hayes turned back to the device, hearing Krell soldiers approaching. The progress bar had reached 70%. The door burst open. Hayes fired his weapon, taking down the first Krell soldiers, but more kept coming. A shot struck his shoulder, another his leg. Still, he protected the device. The progress bar reached 100%, just as the Krell overwhelmed him. Throughout the massive station, lights flickered. The Krell soldiers attacking Hayes suddenly stopped, their movements becoming erratic. Across the galaxy, Krell ships ceased firing, drifting endlessly. The virus had worked. The Supreme Hive's control was broken. 1 year later, Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the ceremony on the view screen. Representatives from over 30 species gathered to sign the Galactic Concordat, a treaty of mutual defense and cooperation. Dr. Alan Murphy had been appointed as Earth's representative. As he signed the document, Foster thought of all those who had sacrificed to make this moment possible. On a distant world, in what had been Krell territory, Foster's team made a startling discovery. In a sealed vault, they found ancient records showing the Krell's original form, peaceful creatures who had been transformed into warriors by a now extinct conqueror species. Just like us, Foster said quietly. They were forced to become something they weren't. In the final meeting of the Alliance Council, Foster proposed a controversial measure to help the fragmented Krell mini-hives restore their original peaceful nature. "We woke up our war gods when we needed them," she told the council. "Now it's time to let them sleep again, but not to forget they exist." Earth's warships remained, but they were placed under the authority of the Galactic Concordat, with crews from many species working together. The Temple of the War Gods stood open, not for worship, but as a reminder of what they could be when needed, and what they chose not to be when peace was possible.